Eagles fans, this is Mike Kaye from NJ Advanced Media, and welcome to the No Huddle Show podcast, where we discuss anything and everything Philadelphia Eagles. You can read our content on NJ.com/Eagles, bookmark that, and you can subscribe to our exclusive Eagles Insider Tech service, where we'll break news, give you insider observations, and provide in-depth analysis. Through Eagles Extra, you can send questions and comments directly to us, and we'll respond to your phone. With me today, as always, is my fellow Eagles beat reporter, Chris Franklin. Today, we're going to discuss what the Eagles should do in Week 18, their best opponent for the first round of the playoffs, and we'll touch on the great Howie Roseman debate. But before we get into that, Chris, how you doing today?
Not too bad, man. I'm loving this snow that we had earlier this week, and it looks like we're getting some more. So I actually feel like it's finally like true football, late December playoff type weather, man. How are you doing?
I'm here. The snow came and went. I was playing with my kid in the snow 2 days ago, and now there's no snow. So it's a very interesting dynamic for the winter. My brother lives in Nashville, and they're getting tons of snow right now. When that doesn't really make a ton of sense to me. Although I have been in Nashville when it snowed, so I guess whatever. Anyway, let's get into this Howie Roseman debate because, for those who didn't see it, I got into it a little bit with another writer about, a couple of other writers about Howie Roseman's record. I think there's two sides of this coin, and I'm kind of actually probably square in the middle. But I think that's taken as me being a defender of Howie Roseman. I think Howie Roseman, based on fact, is a top 10 general manager in the NFL. I don't think he's a top 5 guy. I don't think he is an elite general manager by any stretch. But I do think the amount of flack he gets, considering, look, I came here post-Super Bowl. I've covered 3 playoff teams in 4 years. He's been the lone constant in the front office during that period. Look, I know there's talk about his drafting. His drafting has been poor. There's talk about what he does behind the scenes. Yes, that's been poor. But he's been able to be successful despite all of those things. And I think when you compare him to the rest of the league, and not in a vacuum, he's actually one of the more successful GMs of the past 2 decades. In fact, he's been a constant throughout the most successful period in franchise history. Yes, he is recycled through head coach. He's gone through head coaches faster than any successful GM in sports history, probably. But I also think when you look at those firings, the Andy Reid era, he inherited Andy Reid, and Reid did seem like he needed to change the scenery anyway. Chip Kelly, that seemed to be a mutual disaster. Doug Peterson, you could argue, was greatly impacted by what Howie Roseman did behind the scenes in both negative and positive ways. But I think when you look at how low this team was looked at entering this offseason and what they've been able to accomplish, after Roseman and Lurie hired Nick Sirianni, who was a very unconventional choice, I think there's a lot to be said about what's happened here and how much Howie Roseman deserves credit for it. What do you say, Chris? Where's your stance on Howie Roseman after I just went on that diatribe?
I'd probably say if I was giving his career a grade, I'm giving it like a C- ish. The reason why I'm doing that is so many times when you look at when this team, he's always going to get credit as being the guy, one of the architects that brought the Super Bowl. Granted, that's why I think it's beyond that. But when you look at what he's done, as in the reasons why the team has had struggles at times, I mean, you mentioned the Andy Reid stuff when he started getting, he was a little burned out. I think part of the job of being a guy who is a general manager, you have to see when your coaches are ready to basically end it. I think personally, I would have probably ended Reid probably about 2008. I thought his tenure was getting time there. We all know about the Chip Kelly thing. I agree with you there. The Doug Peterson thing, I still look at the time when it comes to coaching. It's just, I think they gave up a little bit too soon on Doug. I still believe that. And that's not a slight against Nick Sirianni, because I think he's doing a good job. I just would have kept Doug around here for one more year, because I think especially if I was from Roseman's situation, as many times as he's been given chances to fix mistakes that he's caused, basically with his draft history, with his free agent signings, with at times trying to outsmart some of the other people in the league, when basically sometimes the correct thing is just sometimes doing the most simplest basic things. I thought he should have stuck with it.
To clarify before you go on, he actually did not make the decision to let go of Peterson. That was solely Jeffrey Lurie. I can tell you that. That said, what Howie Roseman accomplished during the past 2 years obviously factored into that evaluation. So sorry, I just wanted to clarify that. Go ahead.
I also think he has the ear of Jeffrey Lurie, and even though I think when it comes to I think he looks around here. I think when it comes to deciding when to do anything, one of the first people he asks is Howie. And I still, when you look overall what this team has done, I mean, when you see the reports about the analytics and how heavy stuff is used and just some of the other stuff that surrounds the team in the past when it comes to free agents and draft and everything, I just look right now and I see a guy who's basically is cleaning up some of the stuff that he's done in the past. And would I take him over what's going on in Jacksonville? Yeah. Would I take him over about a bottom third of the league? Yeah. But you look at some of the other guys around the league and everything else, I just think he's about average, below average. And I think a lot of that comes to his draft history, save for the 2018 draft. I mean, look at that the rest of the classes. Well, I'll say 2021. I'll give him the 2020 draft. 2021, excuse me. I'll give him this draft too. But when you look at the other classes, there's been a lot of misses, and the team he's tried to fix from a lot of misses over that time.
Yeah, I do think we also have to reflect on the 2020 draft differently because of what we've seen from 2021. I'm not giving him a pass for that, but Jalen Hurts has just led the team to a playoff berth. If his draft positioning was switched with Jalen Reagor, Jalen Hurts has played better than pretty much anybody drafted over the last 2 years at the quarterback position, sans Justin Herbert and Mac Jones. So if you're ranking him as the third best quarterback in that group, I think, again, I'm not trying to pass the buck for Howie Roseman. I'm not. I also think a lot of what you've brought up are Jeffrey Lurie problems and not Howie Roseman problems. Jeffrey Lurie's been an enabler for Howie because Howie's been an enabler for Jeff, is my read on the situation. Here's what I would say, too. We've talked about free agent signings. He got a lot of criticism for Javon Hargrave and Darius Slay and extending Darius Slay. They're the two best players on defense right now. Jalen Hurts has led a team to the playoffs, albeit in a weak division, albeit at 9-7. I think when you look at the factual evidence, they've made the playoffs 4 out of 5 years. They've won a Super Bowl, 2 division titles. And yes, you can argue that the NFC East isn't very good, but then you look at Indianapolis at a guy like Chris Ballard, who has never won a division title in his 4 years in Indianapolis, in the easiest division where you're probably going to get 3 wins out of facing the Texans and Jaguars every year. He's never beat the Jaguars on the road, despite them being 1-15 last year and 2-15, I guess, this year. I just think there's like this vacuum of on the surface. Yes, Howie Roseman has not drafted well. That's completely accurate. But I think when you look at the quote-unquote mess that he's cleaning up, I mean, this team is in position to contend for a decent amount of time, or at least build a young core that can contend. I've been going through the 2021 draft class today for a story that I'm doing. And, I mean, the only guys I would give below a C for this draft class are Mr. T. So, like, it's an interesting dynamic, right? I don't think anyone's wrong here. I think acting like he's a horrific general manager or a bad general manager is off. And I'm going to disagree with you that he is below average.
I'll counter as well too. Like you mentioned, when it comes to the Colts and you have Houston and Jacksonville. Well, look how many times that under his stead that you've had the Giants and Washington being down. I mean, even the Cowboys at times. I mean, there's to me, in my opinion, over the last, I'd probably say decade, the AFC has been a tougher road to go through to get to a Super Bowl or to have success in the playoffs than the NFC has been. When you look at some of those teams, look at structure, even the quarterback position.
I agree on the greater whole. I wouldn't say but I wouldn't say, like, for instance, Les Snead gets all this credit. Les Snead built a team that scored 3 points against nearly the same Patriots team that Howie Roseman's squad put up 41 points on. Now, I'm not trying to take away anything that Doug Peterson or Frank Reich or anybody did during that run, but I think, like, there's this need to compare. I mean, like, for some, the criticism with Roseman is just internal, right? It's the character of the guy. It's the draft picks. It's the free agent signings. But I think there's also a need to compare and contrast. And I think there's a disingenuous argument made for why other GMs are better when it comes to, like, nitpicking. Trust me, I do not think he is a top 5 GM. That's not even close to what he is, but I do think he's in that second tier of GMs, that 8 to 15 range is what I think he's kind of in. He's had his lumps, he's had his nuts. Like Rick Spielman, yes, sure, Rick Spielman took advantage of the Eagles taking Jalen Reagor and drafted Justin Jefferson. He also guaranteed Kirk Cousins $1 bajillion and is stuck with him at least through next year. And his team hasn't made the playoffs in the 2 years since he's had Justin Jefferson. I think, like, that's something that also needs to be considered too. But when you're looking at facts, over the past 5 years, Howie Roseman has been extremely successful, whether you want to go to the NFC East, which they can't control where they play. You want to go their schedule, like, they can't control, again, who they play. But I also think you have to criticize him for the past 2 off seasons. The past 2 off seasons were really bad. This off season was solid. He is cleaning up a mess, because if you look at their defensive unit, really, they have, like, 2 drafted notable players on that side of the ball. And only maybe a couple of free agent signings that came prior to last year. So I think that is a completely valid criticism. When you look at TJ Edwards, who they signed as an undrafted free agent, and then Josh Sweat, who they drafted in the 4th round, those are really the 2 notable guys who could be long-term contributors that they have had since the jump. They're homegrown prior to this year. I think that is an extremely valid criticism and something that Howie Roseman absolutely needs to fix. And it's part of the reason why I think next year, this draft, when they have all these premium picks, should be really focused on defense. But then I think you look at the offense, and while drafting players is absolutely the right move, and that's how you set up a franchise, then you can't in turn say, oh, well, Les Snead is this brilliant guy when he trades away first-round picks like they're nothing. Chris Ballard's traded away his last 2, or has traded away first-round picks as well. So it's an interesting dynamic, and it's an interesting debate to me. I do think there's a lot more emotion in it from a fan perspective, obviously, but I think if you really look at all of these GMs, I think Roseman is in that 8 to 15 range as far as GMs go. And while the idea in Philadelphia is to always shoot for the stars, you know, having the perspective I have from coming from Jacksonville, it's just not how it works. And I've yet to see somebody come up with a guy who is better suited to replace Howie Roseman. Because, look, we talk about it with quarterback too, right? Unless you have a guy who you think is going to be better, why are you getting rid of the guy who at least keeps you competitive? And I think that's part of my stand in the debate. It's like, look, I even said, if you're going to get rid of Carson Wentz and Doug Peterson, you should get rid of Howie Roseman. I'm on record saying that. he has had a solid bounce back year. Now, he has to absolutely nail at least 3 of the 4 draft picks he has in the first 2 rounds this upcoming year to really kind of sustain any success. We've all seen him be very good at building up a program, but his problem is long-term success, and we saw how quickly that Super Bowl team fell apart. But I also think some of the criticism is kind of in a vacuum, and I think that's kind of where I push back with. Now, look, his head needs to be on a swivel here. If he messes up these major picks next year, it'll be all for naught, and he should be sent packing. And I understand the fan base saying, hey, I don't trust this guy to draft. You shouldn't. He has not done a good job as a drafter. But drafting is only one piece of the pie, in my opinion. And when you look at the success that they've had, including hiring Doug Peterson and hiring Nick Sirianni, I think he deserves a little bit more credit than he's probably given on the greater whole. So that's where I would go there. Chris, do you have any last words, any last comebacks?
That was a lot. I felt like I was talking to Nick Sirianni on one of his press conferences. Jeez, money. But I understand what you're saying. I think it's going to be one of the ones we're going to agree to disagree on that one. I just look at overall when it comes to his – and I think a lot of things – when it comes to drafting, you mentioned that too. I think it's a lot of times you need – when you look at all the successful franchises that you've seen, quote-unquote, dynasties, or you look at the ones that have had long-term success – all of them are built on the success of the draft, how you choose a talent, and having a good scouting culture to do that. When you see, I know this is overblown with the Justin Jefferson thing, when your scouts, the guys who look at college football tape 24/7, throughout the whole entire year, they say this is the guy, and then you have the pro team, the pro scouts, not pro scouts, but the pro personnel, once the season's over, they start looking at stuff, putting in, who don't look as much as often as the pro coaches. I know they have to implement, project how they're going to go into their system and stuff, but you look at the talent, you get somebody that overrides them over time. It's and you choose Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. I think that's a big indictment. When you just look overall, and you have to wonder, how often does that go? Because I just see there's too many instances over this whole entire time period. And you can say, well, he's been here for so long. Of course, you're going to get examples. Nobody's perfect 100%, blah, blah, blah. There's too many instances over time, a long extended period of time. This team should be in a position similar to the Kansas City Chiefs year in, year out. And you can say, oh, well, Patrick Mahomes and have the quarterback, and that's true. But to me, this team should consistently be in the conversation to being in one of the top 3 seeds in the playoffs. That comes with the expectation of being in the Delaware Valley. This team should always be in the conversation of being a top 3 team, of not.
But that's what I'm talking about in the vacuum. That one too, but that's not realistic. That's not realistic.
I think it is overall if you draft very well, and that's the problem. My issues I have when it comes to Roseman.
If you turn into a unicorn, you can be able to fly. What do you mean? Like, if you draft, here's the thing. Like, what is drafting well? Is that hitting on? Look, they sold out to win a Super Bowl, and they overachieved. Frankly, they should have not been as good as they were in 2017. They absolutely overachieved, hit lightning in a bottle. That was they hit on every free, it doesn't happen that way. And I think to say, well, they should be contending based on what? They signed a bunch of short-term guys. So why should they be contending? Like, if you're drafting well, they didn't develop anybody under Peterson. Like, if that's what you're going to say, like, who did they develop other than offensive linemen?
I look at I wanted to go back and
look at where Rasul Douglas is right now. Now, Rasul Douglas got cut by a bunch of other teams. I'm not saying he was like a perfect guy, but like Rasul Douglas is having success elsewhere. I'm pretty sure that Derek Barnett might have success elsewhere.
I think when you look at the defense, the first guy who was brought in before even Doug Peterson was hired was Jim Schwartz, and then Jim Schwartz didn't have a history of developing a lot of his younger guys, so you start seeing go elsewhere. And Jim Schwartz, I believe, would have been one of the how he brought in Schwartz before the team brought in decided to go Peterson. So that's where I will look at that as well too. So if you're looking to go continue to develop these players and you brought in a guy who doesn't develop players, and then you're just going to continually just basically have to sign free agents continually sign free agents at high price positions, and you can't.
But that's how they won a Super Bowl, Chris. But that's how they won a Super Bowl. They didn't win a Super Bowl because they suddenly developed players. Like, that's my point to you. They had Rodney McLeod, they had Brandon Brooks, that they brought in the year before. The year before, they signed Chris Long. They had Stefan Wisniewski. They brought in. They traded for Ronald Darby. Like. They signed Nigel Bradham the year before. Like, these are all free agent signings, so it's not like they just suddenly developed guys. So that's why I'm kind of confused as to.
No. I'm saying they basically bought a Super Bowl.
Right. So then why should they be competing every year if they bought a Super Bowl? The logic of that was they essentially sold their souls to the devil. From a roster building standpoint, as Les Snead has been praised for the last 5 years and never won anything other than an NFC Championship game, like, that to me is where I'm kind of like, how is this debate logical?
What I'm saying is that they can't continue. My thing is saying that they shouldn't be doing that. My thing is that they should be continuing drafting. And if they can't draft the right players and they continually have to go out and fill out and buy and basically go out to free agency to fill those spots, that's why I have the issue with. And I think that you need to me. In my view of a general manager, you have to find the right players to fill in for your positions, and you use free agency as a supplement. Would continually have issues with bringing in, continually have issues finding the right talent or overriding your scouting staff to bring in people under positions of need. I have issues with that. When you continually have to keep drafting for the same position because you messed up from the year before because of AKA Devonta Smith for Jalen Reagor, AKA some of these other spots, you can't continually do that. That's what my issue is. And to me, I just can't dismiss the whole, well, that's just drafting is just one part. To me, it's everything. That's where your foundation. That's where you get your foundational guys. That's where you get.
Unless you're the Los Angeles Rams.
Well, screw the Rams.
No, but my point is here. Look, you could go down the list. Look. NFL GMs here. Let me bring up the list because I'm loving this debate. Here we go.
I am not.
Well, White, you're wrong. That's why.
No. I think you're completely wrong on this one. I really, truly do. He's not. I know.
Jason Licht. Okay, Jason Licht. Let's talk about Jason Licht. Okay. Who, according to Sporting News, coming into this year was the number one GM. The year before, he was ranked 16th. That man did not make the playoffs before he brought in Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski, Antonio Brown, and Leonard Fournette. Okay,
right, I'll stop right now. How many? I understand. How many elite GMs do you think there are? Right, elite. I'm just going to say elite. How many elite GMs do you think there are right now? There are
3. Okay,
so next here, you say he's around 8-15. 8 to 15. If you had to rank them, if you had to say, hey, right now today, where's Howie Roseman? You said 8 to 15. If you said somewhere in that range between 8 and 15, where's Howie Roseman ranked?
Probably 10.
Okay. When you look at that, and so you're saying, you're putting him actually higher than above average. Then you're putting him average. You're putting him on the above average.
I would say he's between 10 and 12, off the top of my head.
All right.
Here. The best GM in the league is John Robinson, in my opinion, for the Titans. The fact that they are about to lock up the number one seed in the AFC without Derrick Henry for 8 games is absolutely incredible. That defense is phenomenal. The offensive line is good. They've drafted well at wide receiver. And frankly, Mike Vrabel would not have been my 8th choice for a head coach when he was hired, and he's been phenomenal. From there, I'd probably go Belichick, who has routinely missed on wide receiver and cornerbacks over the last 20 years. And I think Eric DeCosta is a brilliant GM. I think he's done an amazing job in Baltimore. And look, they're on the cusp of missing the playoffs. I think another guy I would put over Howie is Kevin Colbert for the Steelers. They're probably going to miss out on the playoffs. I'd probably go with Brian Gutekunst. I can't really pronounce his name properly. For the Packers, despite all the Aaron Rodgers stuff, that team has won 12 games in the last 3 seasons. Hiring LaFleur was a master stroke. when nobody really kind of knew who he was. Look, Tom Telesco nailed the quarterback, got Justin Herbert when nobody thought that he was going to be the number one guy. But like you look at the back end of bad GMs, David Gettleman's horrible. Chris Greer has made countless bad decisions. This is a guy who signed Jordan Howard to like a massive contract after missing half a season with a stinger injury. Ryan Pace, who's routinely missed at quarterback. I just like Joe Douglas, who got tons of credit for the Super Bowl, has had 2 absolutely brutal years with the Jets. George Patton was terrible this year with the Broncos. Martin Mayhew, with Washington. I think you look at a lot of these teams and they are not really set up to like contend for a long-term thing. And I think if you're looking at this outside of a vacuum, and I agree you're looking at this objectively and from your point of view, but like when you look at teams, there are very rare teams that are able to contend every year. And that's been the Patriots, that's been the Ravens, that's been the Chiefs. And to your point, the AFC has been a much harder go, right? But what the Buccaneers are essentially doing in a division where an aging Matt Ryan is on his last leg, Taysom Hill is Taysom Hill, and Sam Darnold is Sam Darnold, the Buccaneers are balling. And I would be shocked if they are contending once Tom Brady retires, even though he's probably going to play till he's 60. Veach didn't draft Patrick Mahomes. Veach didn't draft Tyreek Hill. Veach didn't draft Travis Kelce. So I think like there's that too. I think this is a situation where, I think it has a lot to do with the parts. I think it has to do with the coaching. I think it has to do with where you're at as a general manager with your staff. And I think this situation with the Eagles is really polarizing because, frankly, Howie Roseman's character is constantly reported on. And he is rightfully criticized for that. But when you look at the success they've had, they've been in the discussion for the playoffs every single year, even last year, to the point where they were in the worst division in football and they were contending until like week 15. So it's like, I kind of don't understand how you can say he's below average as a general manager from a fact-based argument.
That's what I'm looking at a list right now of all the guys right now, and I'll just go all the guys I'd rather have right now than Howie Roseman.
Cool. I'll poke holes in them.
Go for it. Brandon Beane. I know you said you can say
Beane's
Brandon
awesome.
Beane.
He's better.
Bill Belichick.
Awesome.
Eric DeCosta.
Awesome.
Mike Brown.
Mike Brown?
I go Mike Brown.
They won like 4 games before this year.
I go Mike Brown. Look what they're building right now. Look what they're starting to build together.
But based on your logic, though, like Howie Roseman's never had back-to-back seasons that bad. They haven't made the playoffs in years. So based on your logic, though, like having one good year doesn't matter.
I'm going by basically when it comes to drafting in the future, and the guy who took over the job and trying to build stuff. He drafted Billy
Price.
I'm still going Mike Brown.
He drafted Billy Price.
I'm going Mike Brown. Chris Ballard, I'm still going over Howie Roseman. John Robinson, Brett Veach. I'd probably say, I'm on the fence of this one basically because of when it comes to who was actually making the final decisions out there in Oakland, and Las Vegas. I'm on the fence with Mayock. I'd seriously consider him.
Farrell's not been very good, but I do like Mayock. I wouldn't take him over Howie, but I do think he is better than probably advertised.
I think that Gutekunst, I still take him.
Yeah, I would take him over Howie. I agree.
I probably go Just basically
based on what though? Like based on what?
Knowing on what the way that I don't agree with what the way they're doing, but I think overall the moves that he's had to make based on what he's basically been given down by general management and basically having to work with Brady and try to get the stuff he's done and maneuver that cap and basically helping with the recruiting aspect of it along with Brady to get those guys in there. I still like that. I still would take him. Let's see where I lost where I was at. Kevin Colbert.
Yeah,
I like
Kevin
what he's
Colbert
done.
over him.
I'll definitely take that one. Lynch, I'm on the fence on.
Dude, I'm
on the fence.
Oh my god.
On the fence.
The dude drafted Solomon Thomas 3rd overall. The guy's already on another team. He traded his best defensive lineman to the Colts for a late 1st round pick.
Brandon Ayuk.
So cool, Brandon Ayuk. So he drafted.
He's found a couple of guys.
The best move that guy has made is drafting Deebo Samuel, who was a phenomenal prospect and went incredibly underdrafted. But
I say I'm on the fence. I'm saying that one too. I say I'm on the fence on that.
The man traded up to number 3 to take the wrong quarterback, in my opinion. So, and then he also gave Garoppolo a huge contract, and the guy basically lost them the Super Bowl. So, go ahead, keep going.
I'm probably. You know what? If you look at the guys that has. Sorry, I just looked
You're
at
hedging, bro.
Freaking news. No, I'm not. I just got the alert saying that Antonio Brown is going to be released today. I was looking at that.
Oh, okay.
So I was looking like,
wow, another great move by Jason Light.
Hey, I'm just saying he did when he was able to come in and help out with that. It looked like good, especially when you look at they had those 3 guys together, and as Brady's boy, he was trying. He helped get Brady his guy into there and make it fit within the cap and everything else. So, hey, that one too. I'm on the fence with Schneider too.
But God.
I say dude, I'm on the fence with Schneider.
Russell Wilson, the last 5 years of Russell Wilson's career have been wasted because they have not drafted a very good offensive lineman ever. They traded for Dwayne Brown. He's awesome. Outside of that, they've not. I mean, this is a guy who took James Carpenter. Like,
if John Schneider was here for the last 3-4 years, do you think the Eagles have success?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, his philosophy is so much different than. He also has a Hall of Fame head coach, so so is
Belichick too, because we know this team would actually draft linebackers.
He did take Bobby Wagner over Michael Kendricks, which I would have done a million times, but that was also like 11 years ago or 10 years ago. He has as many Super Bowl rings as Howie Roseman and got the better quarterback in that draft.
Everybody knows we're going to take David Gettleman over Howie Roseman. I say that joking.
I would actually take Jerry Jones over Howie.
See, that's where I take Stephen Jones over Howie. Stephen Jones, I think, has a lot more say now in those personnel.
Credit to, I would take over Howie for sure.
Stephen Jones, it's definitely Stephen Jones. I think Jerry's too busy looking at not. Oh, wait, let me stop before I say something. I'm in trouble.
Stephen Jones, I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you. I think Stephen Jones is better than Howie.
So let's see. I lost count. But that's basically where we're at.
Also, by the way, Mike Brown's not the GM. Duke Tobin is for the Bengals. But he's also kind of new. So.
Yeah. See, I give that one too. Well, you went too. I'll give it to him too. But yeah, I lost count. But those are who I put in front of him.
So that would put him in the 10 to 12 range.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
There's no way you named 15 names just now.
All right, let me write it. Okay. I'm looking at a couple things here. Bean, Belichick, DaCosta, Brown, that four. Oh, I forgot Andrew Berry.
Andrew Berry.
I forgot.
Okay, so Andrew Berry, another guy who's like, I'm a big fan of Andrew Berry, but in 2 years,
I know it's going to help your case when you're saying how he worked with Howie Roseman.
I wasn't even going to go there because it's frankly not helped Joe Douglas. But and I'm not even standing for Howie Roseman. I don't think he's an elite GM. I don't even think he's a top 8 GM. I think he's in the 10 to 12 range. I think that's.
Wait, you're not trying to audition for a job?
Ha ha! Because his argument was so objective.
I had to throw that one.
All right,
sorry.
we've debated this for like roughly 35 minutes.
I'm sorry.
You guys can judge. Send us your comments. Tell us who you agree with. Tweet us. Send us your reviews. We want to hear from you. Now, this should be easy as you're laughing. This is actually one of our better podcasts, in my opinion. It's been very fun. So at the 35-minute mark, let's talk about it. Look, I asked Nick Sirianni this morning, we're recording this Thursday morning, if he was going to rest his starters, and if not, what would be the logic there? And he essentially said that they want to beat the Cowboys and they're still figuring things out. They are not still figuring things out. I find that that's ridiculous. I have a lot of respect for Nick Sirianni, but feeding us that with you got to take that with a grain of salt. What should they do for Week 18? Should they sit players? Should they not?
Oh, they should definitely sit the players. I mean, you still hope to win the game with your reserves, but you should just sit your main starters. I mean, Jalen Hurts continually is still dealing with that ankle injury. He was limited in practice the last 2 days, and he still shows up on the injury report. I think you sit him. I'm not risking somebody rolling up on his ankle even on one series. I'm not doing that. When you look at if it's Jason Kelce, I know he's got the streak going. I'm putting him in for a snap, maybe one series, and then I'm pulling him immediately. I'm not letting that happen. All these guys who have gotten you to this point are banged up. A lot of them are banged up. I mean, it just comes with the nature of as the season goes along, guys get nicked up. You had your bye week late, so just let the guys rest for one game. Let them heal. Let them prepare completely for whoever the opponent is going to be coming up. And just go from there. You can still, I think you gain a lot more value with the young players coming in, getting actual game experience. Guys like Cameron Malvo, who came on today. And also, I'd use Gardner Minshew and use this. I'd basically go out there and say. Who traded
for Gardner Minshew? Who signed Calvin Malvo?
Well, yeah, he's here now. Anyway, I use Gardner Minshew, and since he's on the roster now by the person who we just debated for 35 minutes, and I'm getting, but if you use him, you tell him, say, hey, listen, this is your chance to audition for potentially a job. If you get a good deal, if we get a good draft pick back, you can go start for some other team. I use that, say, hey, you have the nation's attention right now. Prove to the fan bases of everybody who's watching this game that you should be their starter, and you send them out that way. There's so much of the value I think you can get for more of these reserves to get the experience and the playing time than just putting somebody out to say, hey, you know what? Oh, wow, we have a chance to move to the 6th seed. There's no gain from that. So just rest the guys.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think something you really have to factor in is they're being asked to play 4 games in 19 days. That's unreal. I think it's probably unheard of. The fact that they moved this game to Saturday really grinds my gears, not because of their health or their playing time, but the fact that we have to cover another night game that's meaningless. I just to me, I'm kind of bummed about it. I'd rather cover a 1:00 game, be able to kind of put everything together. Whatever. Anyway, beat writers complaining about their schedules. Look,
I'm throwing a flag on the NFL. It changed. Is a personal foul on the NFL. It changed my schedule a lot too. I was looking forward to something. But thanks, guys.
So the last thing that I want us to debate here, which in a debate-heavy show, is who the best opponent would be for the Eagles. Now, there's a chance that if they lock up the 6th seed. Or the 7th seed, their most likely matchups are either going to be the LA Rams and Les Snead or the Bucs and Jason Light.
It's going back to this.
Now, I'm of the opinion that LA and the Buccaneers are significantly better teams than the Eagles. There's no debate about that. I was looking at the greater overarching whole for Roseman and Snead. I don't think the Bucs or the Rams are going to win the Super Bowl this year. That said, I do think both are really difficult matchups for the Eagles. I'm going to let you start and say who you'll take, which one you think is the better matchup for the Eagles right now and why.
The reason why I'm going with this team is because they've gone through a significant amount, gone through injuries at significant positions offensively. And so I would rather the Eagles play the Bucs in the first round because with Antonio Brown not being there anymore, you don't have to worry about him hurting you from the slot. You don't have Chris Godwin on the outside to try to bring you deep along with him and Evans and Brown there. So I think you don't have to worry about too much, in my opinion, too many deep shots being taken that way. You still have to worry about Mike Evans, but I think you can keep everything underneath. And basically, I think it plays right into the hands of what Jonathan Gannon would like to do in keeping everything underneath and try and prevent the big play from happening. I look at the Bucs defense. I know it's tough to run against them with Vea in the middle, but I think when you look at this Eagles team has proven when it comes to some of the best run defenses in the league, they find ways to scheme them and have success. So given that you have those things going for you, I know you have Tom Brady on the other sideline. We all know what his history has been when it comes to the playoffs and success he's had there. But when you look at the way that the Eagles match up and what the Eagles like to do with their philosophically, schematically, I think that's the best matchup for this team to go. Who you want to go with?
For the sake of the debate, I mean, look, the Rams are
not just a debate. Just go.
Well, no, I do agree that the Bucs are the better matchup, but I do think with the Rams, the Eagles match up in a way where I think if they needed to control the clock and force turnovers on Matt Stafford, we've seen Stafford's armor kind of unhinge a little bit. He has turned the ball over. He's also not a guy who's got a lot of playoff experience, and when he has not looked that terrific. I think the Eagles can force turnovers. I think that Darius Slay is a very good matchup for Odell Beckham. I think that Maddox, with some help, can do relatively well against Cooper Kupp. Same with Steve Nelson. Where I'm at is the Eagles, any team that plays the Rams is going to have a tough time throwing the football. The Eagles don't need to throw the football to be successful, or at least haven't as of late. I also think Jalen Hurts' ability to escape the pocket on the outside helps kind of deter the effectiveness a little bit, at least, of Aaron Donald. I don't think the Rams are clear-cut, like they're going to blow them out of the water sort of team, because I think the Eagles can control the clock and create turnovers. That said, like you said, I do think injuries have really kind of weighed in for the Buccaneers. I think Mike Evans is a tougher matchup for Darius Slay than Odell Beckham would be. I just, history shows that the high-powered offense is probably going to win, and I think the Rams are definitely better fit to put up points on the Eagles, especially at home. I think the Eagles would prefer to play the Buccaneers.
I'm worried about Aaron Donald controlling the middle. I know that he hasn't had success against the Eagles, but you don't have Brandon Brooks there.
Yeah, Nate Herbig. Ironically, Nate Herbig's best game of his career was against Aaron Donald.
Yeah, and I'm just worried that now that he's got some tape on him, and Aaron Donald being Aaron Donald, that they try to take advantage of that, and he's disruptive of the middle, and all hell breaks loose, and almost a lot of plays are off schedule. So that's the only other thing I'd probably say with the Rams. I'm like, I'm better for it. I agree with you with a lot of other stuff when it comes to the Rams if they had to face them, but that's the one key thing. I'm like, let me shy away. I'd rather go with the Bucs.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would tell you this. I would rather go to LA. I'm probably in the minority from the beat writer travel perspective over going to Tampa Bay. But, that's neither here nor there. I want to check out that new stadium. But, yeah, man, this was a fun debate show. We don't normally have those. Typically, we're in relatively good agreement, or at least we can see the other perspective. I think this was a good debate, and I'm looking forward to hearing feedback from the fan base. Again,
thanks, Skip.
I think Howie Roseman deserves a ton of criticism for the way he's handled the management of this team. That said, when I look at the facts and the statistics and the success, I think he's at least in the top half of the league as a general manager. That is what I'm debating. I'm not saying that he should have kept his job. I'm saying he had a very solid year this year and deserves praise for that, but there is the stink of the past 2 years that I think definitely contends with his legacy and definitely contends with why the fan base feels the way the fan base does. Rager over Jefferson is going to go down as one of the worst decisions in franchise history. There's no question about that. I'm less bullish on the JJ DK thing because once you get in the second round, everything's kind of a little bit blurred. I think the drafting of Jalen Hurts is going to be polarizing just because of what it led to with Carson Wentz. Although I think that ship sailed even before that pick. But yeah, so if you guys want to give us feedback on Eagles Extra, you can sign up for 2 weeks free by going to NJ.com/text. Chris and I love to hear from you guys. We're having a lot of fun on there. You'll get detailed analysis, up-to-the-minute news, and more. Again, 2 weeks free on Eagles Extra, NJ.com/text. I'm looking forward to hopefully hearing from our former boss, Kevin Whitmer, who left at the end of December. Big fan of his. I know he's a big fan of the show, so I'm hoping to get an email from him for both of us shortly. And also remember to subscribe to the No Huddle Show podcast wherever you get your podcasts, especially if you like debates about GMs who you have a very strong opinion about. For Chris, I'm Mike. I want to say Happy New Year. Thank you so much for listening to us. If you're a new listener or you've been rocking with us since before either of us even got here, we're over 400 episodes strong. It's been fun covering this playoff push. We're excited to give you a bunch of great coverage over the next week here on the No Huddle Show podcast and NJ.com. Again, for Chris, I'm Mike. We'll talk to you soon.